Alan Gorky is the Chief Academic Technology Officer at the University of Miami. His organization works with faculty to enhance teaching and learning through the appropriate use of current and emerging technologies. Before moving to the University of Miami, Alan worked for Penn State University for more than 21 years in a variety of roles, including the creation of hybrid and online courses, the development of Penn State's first MOOCs, flipped classroom projects, digital storytelling, game-based learning, learning management systems, learning space design, faculty development events, and the research and deployment of new technologies. Alan holds a bachelor's degree in industrial engineering, as well as a master's degree in distance education, both from Penn State University. He is also a member of the CAS Learning Initiatives writing team for the 7 Things You Should Know About series of white papers. Alan is also a member of the advisory board for the New Media Consortium Horizon Report, and he is also a reviewer for the American Journal of Distance Education. So without further delay, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Mr. Alan Gorky.
Thanks, Chantal, for that excellent introduction, most of which I wrote myself. But so the title of my presentation today is New Tools for Engaging Students. Can everyone hear me okay? Because I prefer the lavalier mic. Okay. So what is the biggest threat to FIU online? Certainly, FIU online is being, the marketplace is being filled with a number of other competitors. Most of these you've heard of before. The newer players in this market are things like Udacity and Coursera, who are offering MOOCs, which are massive open online courses to thousands of students internationally. Things like the Khan Academy, which are offering tutorials mainly around math and science, but they're branching out into other areas. And then my university, the University of Miami, just down the road, is getting into the online space. So the questions that I have for you are based on the Clayton Christensen's work. Has anybody here read some of his things? Okay, good. So he talks about, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, but he talks about the steel industry and how there were major international steel mills, and they produced all types of steel. And then along came these kind of micro mills that could produce low quality steel. And what they did was they took the market for the low quality steel because they could offer it at a lower rate. And then the big steel mills said, that's okay, that's a very low quality, that's not much of a profit margin anyway, we'll just focus on the higher end things. So as time went on, the micro mills got better and better and were able to take more and more of the market of the steel industry and ended up completely disrupting the business practice of the steel industry. So the question that, so I've actually seen a presentation from Clay and talked to him about it, and the kind of survival mechanism for disruptive technology whenever it comes along is disrupting yourselves. It's forming an independent unit, maybe within FIU, that could look towards the future and look at what's coming down the line, look at the horizon, look at the unanswered questions, or often unasked questions, to see where we should be going and where you should be taking yourselves. So in other words, disrupting your own practice before somebody else comes along and disrupts it for you. So that's part of my background, is I've been a part of those types of groups, both at Penn State and now at University of Miami for a while now. And it's what I actually love doing. I love working with faculty. I love exploring new technology. It's something that I kind of have a knack for, and then I often find that faculty are also willing to think very differently about their courses. So during the presentation today, whenever I was considering whether I would accept this invitation or not, one of the things I asked was, are you here voluntarily or are you here by mandate? If you're here by mandate, I wouldn't have even bothered coming here today. So my understanding, and if anybody's been mandated to be here, I'm sorry. But my impression is that you're here voluntarily, which means that you're more willing to explore new ideas. So another question I have for you is, what is the biggest problem that we've been ignoring? I propose that it's zombies. So my title presentation today is New Tools for Engaging Students in the Epic Battle Against the Zombie Invasion. Again, I'm Alan Gorky, the Chief Academic Technology Officer at the University of Miami. This is a new position that hasn't existed before July. But a lot of what I'm going to be talking to you about is my experience at Penn State before here, because that's where a lot of the innovation that I'm going to be talking to you happened. So my area of responsibility is in the intersection of information technology and the teaching and learning space. Okay. So again, things like using mobile technology to enable faculty to leave the podium and actually interact with audiences, to actually draw on the screens, and so this is a little bit of a different way of thinking about using an iPad, because it's not using it as a complete replacement for a computer. It's using it in conjunction as a second screen experience. This particular tool is called Doceri. It's very popular with people in the science, technology, engineering, and math courses, but it could be used for pretty much anything. It's Doceri, and by the way, I'm going to send out a list of links and everything afterwards. It's a $30 app, so you have people who are spending thousands and thousands of dollars on smartboards. And I'm sorry if anybody has just recently signed a purchase order for smartboards, but many of you have iPads already and can just use this with a $30 app. So here are some of the things that I think about on a regular basis. Blackboard and other learning management systems, online education, hybrid courses, flipped classrooms, student engagement. I'm going to be focusing on these three, but I'm going to try to touch on every single one of those today. So there's a lot in this presentation. I did a trial run of it, and it took about 3 hours if I'm going to run through everything. So I hope nobody's really hungry for lunch. That might, maybe you have the snacks in the back. Okay, so you won't starve. Zombie specializations. I've learned everything that I need to know about zombies from watching these documentaries. Maybe you've seen some of them. There are very different types of zombies, in case you aren't aware. There's the rage zombies who get infected immediately and run after you. Those are very scary. There's the actual ones who are reanimated corpses. You have ones that are like the I Am Legend, who are like albino zombies. A friend of mine is a traveler. He goes around and focuses on some of the most dangerous ones, which keep me up at night, which are these ones that are basically high-tech zombies in armor. Not a big fan of those. I focus on a particular kind of zombie that is of interest to higher education, which is what I call the walking co-ed. So these are people who, well, they look like people anyway. They wander around campus. They take safe courses. They show up in class sometimes. You talk to them and you get blank stares and dead eyes back. Okay. They exert minimal effort. Now I hear some laughing in the room, and that's because you know exactly the type of thing I'm talking about. They're not involved in campus life, so you know they end up with something that that I'll talk a little bit about later, called the zombie resume. They don't do extra credit. This is a fascinating phenomenon about these types of zombies. You put in extra credit assignments. You say, you know, please, you know, if you're struggling with the course, here's an opportunity to improve your grade. And it's always the A minus, and the B plus students who do all the extra credit. If you guys have a different phenomenon here, like, I'd be shocked. But it's always the students who are really concerned about achievement that are going to do the extra credit, and the other ones don't. They almost never ask questions. And I'll need your help with this, because I think you know what I'm talking about. There is one question that they'll ask. It's usually whenever you're very excited about something. So you're animated, you're talking about a personal story, you're really into it, they raise their hand, and I want you to say this with me, okay? Is this going to be on the test, or the exam, if you want to be fancy? And that's how they drain the life out of them. So am I wrong? Are these zombies? I think they are. So why are they a problem? They decrease course energy of you and of other students, because as soon as they ask that question, they get everyone focused on their final grade and no one's interested in the idea that you were trying to be excited about. It could be the reason that you got your master's degree or your PhD in the first place, something that you're personally interested in, something you've studied a very long time, spent a very long time agonizing about, you just published a paper on something, and then they ask that question about the grade. They can cause grade inflation. So they ask questions like, what do I need to get an A in this course? And then it comes down to, okay, well, you need to turn in this and this and this. They're like, okay, did I do enough? And you're like, all right, I guess I give you an A. Because they've done everything you've told them to, but they haven't done it with any passion or any gusto. They infect other students because they ask questions like this, or they'll write on Rate My Professors, this is what you need to do to get an A in the course. Or don't even bother reading the book because it isn't in there. Or don't even bother going to class, just watch the podcast and do some sample assignments. So they spread that infection. They take more courses than necessary. It's mainly because they're just wandering back and forth. They don't really have a drive. They're taking whatever their friends are taking. They have a higher dropout rate overall. So if they don't have a direction, if they don't have a goal in mind, they'll have a higher dropout rate, and that looks bad for rankings whenever we look at those. They have lower placement rate, which again I call the zombie resume. So recruiters will come and they'll be looking at your students and they'll say, what has this student done while they were here aside from just taking a bunch of classes? And what you'll see on the zombie resume is a title, an email address, a phone number, a major with GPA, no minors, no internships, no study abroad experiences, no clubs or anything like that. And then they'll say, well, what else should I put on there? And it's very hard for people who work in career placement. Lower opinion of other universities. Again, recruiters will say, well, your students are graduating, but they don't really know how to do anything, or they're not that ambitious. Less long-term success, and then they become less affluent alum who then contribute back to the university. So again, this isn't FIU, this is Penn State, this is University of Miami. The interesting thing about places like Harvard is they pre-screen for zombies. So they have a test. And the test is they do things like, you have to come in with a lot of activities. You have to come in saying that you're thinking about changing the world. You have to write an essay. And a zombie, if you ask them to write an essay, will be like, do I have to do that? Well, I'm not going to do it. So I'll apply someplace else. Somebody said this to me the other day, and it really upset me. C's get degrees. I mean, I think this is kind of the credo of the zombie student. All right, so how do we combat zombies? I think in most of those documentaries I showed, they say you need to attack the brain. I completely disagree with this, because if you shoot anybody in the head, they're going to keel over and die, whether they're a student or not. And I certainly don't ever advocate violence in university campuses. My alternative is to attack the heart. So this is an example of what this can look like. Has anybody seen this before? Maybe they know this one? Okay.
I don't understand, but he's changing, and he feels, and he's learning to be human again.
Oh my God, is that him?
Yeah.
So,
You started something here. Whatever it is that you two had, it's infecting the others.
Dad.
Okay, so this is from a documentary called Warm Bodies. It basically tells the story of a bunch of zombies who were just wandering around an airport, most of them, and attacking people whenever they were hungry. And then one in particular, his heart was reactivated by falling in love with this girl, and then he became a not zombie anymore over time. So this is kind of the cure for zombieism. This is the particular quote that I like, especially, are there people here in the liberal arts? I think it's arts and science, liberal arts and sciences, right? Okay. So one of the things I like about a liberal arts education is that it really focuses on what it means to be human, what it means to live the life that we're living. So this is the quote that I like. He feels and he's learning to be human again. I asked you guys a question, which is, why are students interested in some parts of your courses? Okay, and then here's what you said. Now, the reason I show this is because some of you say things like, my students don't see this as personally relevant. My students don't get enough feedback, or it takes too much time, or I don't want to do any things like this. All I did was send out a 3-question survey, and I got about a dozen responses, and here are some some actual quotes and some summaries of what you turned in. Now, if you see your quote up there, I can guarantee you now find this slide more personally relevant, even though you don't know, you're not an instructional designer, or you haven't done, deep thinking about the interesting parts of your course. This makes it relevant because you wrote it. So things like certain topics are more relevant to their lives. The challenge is getting students to see ways that X and Y are related to them. I didn't put in the particular topics. Connections with real-world situations and courses. I realized that there were several students this semester who did great in the on-campus labs, but did not turn in the at-home labs. So that's an interesting, phenomenon. Whether it's required or optional, and whether they have prior knowledge, it's easier for them. I wouldn't say that the prior knowledge necessarily makes it easier for them, but it's connected to that other one, which was about connecting it to other courses and their existing knowledge base, making it more relevant to them. It's more familiar territory. So I have something that I'm going to call course cardiology, and then we're going to talk about that for the rest of the time. And by the way, the zombies is just a metaphor. If you're sitting here thinking, like, why is this guy talking to me about zombies? I mean, what do we name something that's a problem? What do we name the disengaged student? So if you're sitting there grumpy, relax. I won't be talking too much more about zombies. The point is to get the heart pumping again. And there are 14 C's of cardiac, or course cardiology. This is like one of those really easy to remember things, like CAS, keep it simple, stupid, and things like that. Well, these are 14 C's that you need to memorize. Community, customization, challenge, competition, curiosity, creativity, concreteness, caring, chances, contact, and feedback. Those are the 14 C's. So maybe a little bit of a problem. Feedback doesn't start with a C, and there aren't 14 of them. That's mainly because feedback, I group these other things: counters, celebrations, critiques, and coaching. So I have a handout for you, and I could use some help passing that out. Okay, so distribute. Yeah, that's great. One of those per person. So these have some definitions on the papers. Please take this with you. Put it up somewhere where you're going to think about it. There's another C involved here, and that's called crutch. This is a crutch. It is, or another way of looking at it is it's a lens to see your course in a different way, and to think about the things that you do and the things that you might do. So even at the bottom of that handout, it says, please add your own C's, be creative. You might think of other things that I haven't thought of that are that should be part of this this list of things that you want to try. So what I'd like you to do is look over the list and put a check mark next to anything that you currently do, and I want you to circle something that you might be interested in doing. I could use help passing out these two. I like one of these per table. So this is in case you don't have a pen. I've included some things in here. This is your zombie survival kit. I wouldn't go home without one of these. I've included another C in there, a lot of color. Zombies are gross, so there's some hand sanitizer in there. You know, they go to the bathroom, but then they just kind of wander out without washing their hands, and you're kind of like, okay. Okay, so I'll give you a few minutes to do that. To do the checks in the circles. Does anybody have any questions about what they're doing? All right, does everybody have a few checks and a few circles? Okay, so then I could use a volunteer, somebody who has circled an item, like let's say concreteness. Who has circled? No, who has checked concreteness? Who doesn't think they do a good job with concreteness in their class? Okay, great. Do you mind getting up to the microphone? Is your heart moving a little bit faster than it did before? Because it picked on you. That's the cardiology I'm talking about. Like you're getting it activated again. Okay, now who has circled concreteness as something that they would like to try? Okay, you did? Okay, did you just do it now? Okay, so what do you teach? Okay, GIS. Yeah, well, I knew what it was. Maybe, well, that's good for everybody here. So your job is to describe what you do with concreteness in your course, to describe your course, describe what you do to incorporate concreteness, and then give her a suggestion for how she could do something like that for GIS. You are our concreteness expert. Go ahead.
I teach psychology, so I think it's fairly easy to be concrete and use specific examples. For concreteness in my course, I provide examples both in the form of case studies for some of the more abnormal site-related topics, and I provide videos. In my adolescent course, I provide videos of people going through puberty, talking about how difficult it is to deal with issues and things like that. To provide actual guest speakers online, so I do it in the form of TED Talks. It's kind of like having a guest speaker in the class. You could do something similar in any course. TED has so many different topics. So I mostly use videos and case studies for concrete.
Yeah. So do you have a specific suggestion about geographic information systems and how to incorporate concreteness?
It's digital cartography. So having different kinds of sets of data about like social data, economic data, landscape data, physical world data. You ask the data question and you get the answer in the form of a map. In a nutshell, that's what it is.
Having them do some specific examples, giving them some of your sample data to work with and create examples, or having them work together in groups to create specific examples.
Yep. Okay, great. So my point with that is that there are people, oh, yes.
Maybe you could use the search for the plane that was lost, because they actually
great.
scoured the South China Sea, then they went scoured parts of the Indian Ocean, and they kept, based on the data, they just kept decreasing the amount. I think that data is going to eventually be released, but not anytime soon. So maybe you could make up something of your own to say, okay, how did they go about this? How did they decrease the area?
Hey, does anybody else have suggestions about that? Good.
I just said thank you.
With a diverse college like the College of Arts and Sciences, you actually have people here who come from different traditions of how you teach in the classroom. One thing that I like to say about people who teach law in particular, who have taught at a law school, is that they have a very engaged form of teaching in the classroom where they're asking students questions, they expect them to come to class having read things. They've been flipping classrooms for a very long time, and now the rest of us, I think, are trying to catch up. I would bet that for every one that you circled that you wanted to try, there's somebody in this room who's probably checked that off as something that they have done already, and that by hearing ideas from a diverse group of people, you could actually get more ideas from your course. And suggestions like that are very easy to brainstorm. I mean, just grab a cup of coffee with somebody who teaches a different discipline, or use networking lunch today even, and just talk about how they incorporate some of these into their courses. Okay, so let's talk about MOOCs. I have a student response system. It's very high tech. It is in your zombie packet. So get that out, please. Yes, yes, that's it. Hold it up. Okay, that is my student response system. I know, high tech, very expensive. I think these were $2 a piece. What I'd like you to do is rip out a card that's one of each color and give it to the people around your table. So everybody should have one card of each color. It doesn't have to be perfectly ripped for those of you who are very much perfectionists. So, does anybody need more time? Raise your hand if you need more time. Okay, a little bit more time. Okay. So you should have green, yellow, orange, and like a pink there. So I'm going to show you next. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a picture. It will appear immediately in the center of the screen. And I want you to hold up the card or cards that represent your response. So there's going to be a response on each of the 4 color blocks, a picture in the middle. You're going to hold up the card or cards that represent your response. Okay, is everybody ready? Is everybody's heart beating a little bit faster? I see some smiles. If you still think I'm full of it, by the way, I am. I mean, you know, I can accept that critique. If you think I'm boring, that's another situation. Okay, is everybody ready? Very difficult. Okay, so I'm going to show you a picture. Hold up the card or cards that represent your response. Okay, ready? 1. Oh. Good. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Okay, good. Pink? What? I see a couple pink there. It makes me a little nervous whenever I told you how scared I am of zombies. Okay, so that's good. That's good. My point with this is that it's a quick visual way for you to get a sense of where a class is with things. The problem with holding up your hand, saying, has anybody done this before, is that the engaged people will hold up their hand for yes, and you can assume no for everybody else. But there are people who just don't hold up their hand. If you have everybody hold up a card, you get a forced response from everybody in the room. So even if they say yes or no, you know what they're saying. Plus you can do A, B, C, or D. So the next one I'm actually going to be asking about MOOCs, and it's about your MOOC background. There won't be any like zombie jokes here. So I've signed up for a MOOC, I've completed a MOOC, I've taught a MOOC, and I have not done any of those. So where are you with those? Okay. Good. Right. So we have very few, like, sorry, hold this up again. Okay, I don't see many yellow cards. I see a few over here. Okay, so I see more green cards, and if you're holding up the green and the yellow, you're doing it right because you've signed up for a MOOC and you've completed a MOOC. If you've completed a MOOC without signing up for one, maybe somebody else signed you up for one. I don't know. But why do you think that is? I mean, I asked you. Well, let me talk about MOOCs for a little bit. So MOOCs, if you're not familiar with them, massive open online courses. Coursera has about 7 million Courserians, registered users right now. And there was this idea that MOOCs came out of nowhere. Okay? But if you look at trends, if you're looking at what's happening in the world, I mean, you would notice that it's a combination of these 3 areas. So for those people who like Venn diagrams, it's kind of the intersection of these 3 spaces and right in here. So online courses, open educational resources, and cloud computing. In other words, we can have as many people hitting our server at the same time as we want. We want to be able to have open educational resources available for the public. So you publish some good course modules, but you put them in Merlot and nobody actually downloads them or uses them. But once you start offering them as actual courses, people start paying attention. And then people have been offering online courses long enough that they know what those tools should look like. The question that I have for you, do you want to offer a MOOC? If so, what are your reasons and what course would you want to offer? So why don't you talk about that at your table for like 2 minutes, and then I'd like to hear some responses. So do you want to offer a MOOC? If so, what are your reasons and what courses would you want to offer? Okay, now that you've talked about that a little bit, I'd like to hear from, you need 1 more minute? Okay, 1 more minute. By the way, this is control. You have options as students to exert control, to customize this experience for however you want. So you've just done that. Okay, we good? Have some ideas? I don't know if I'll be able to pull the group back. Okay, so I'd like to hear from this table in the center. Do you want to offer a MOOC? What are your reasons? What are some of the ideas that came up? And what course would you like to offer? Yeah, we get this table.
Students being up to the level that they should be. So she was talking, well, you can say it, it was your idea, it wasn't my idea.
So I've just been thinking that if there's a way that I can incorporate it as part of my course, course in which the students can, I can control writing course that I can go into and it's free,
So they can review the basic skills of writing, or if not review, at least learn them again.
So let me ask, would that be instead of taking a course, would that be along with taking a course? Would it be for students who are about to take a certain course?
Not as a new course, because we discussed that afterwards, but I would say as they're about to take the course or with the course.
Okay, good. Does another table want to volunteer some ideas? Yeah.
For a very long time, I've known that people in English in writing courses have used students grading each other's papers, evaluating each other's papers. And MOOCs have taught me that this is something that's really pressing. You can have 170,000 students in a class, and the professor can't read all their papers, but they can read each other's papers. And I think that we can work out ways in which this can be done accurately and confidently, and that FIU has many, many courses that should be having papers that we don't because the professor can't do it. So I think MOOCs can help us to learn how to do this so we can offer papers in all the courses that really should have papers.
Yeah, so that's actually one of the C's on there, which was the critique, which is peer review. So that idea is incorporated in there. In fact, that's one of the only ways that somebody who's in a MOOC with, say, 10,000 people can actually get feedback, because an instructor can't respond to every single one. Another way of doing that inside a MOOC is for a discussion board to happen, and then students to vote up the comments that they like or the questions that they like. And then what happens is the instructor can curate the top ones and do what I did on that slide, which is, here are some concerns you brought up, or here are some insights that the class, or that this MOOC, this 10,000 people, here are the ones that you voted as the most interesting comments. And then you call those out on like a live webcast or something. Very popular with students. Yes?
Are letting students review each other's papers in a MOOC, do you have to rename those papers, or do they know whose paper they are reviewing? Does the student know who's reviewing their paper?
Normally, the student wouldn't know who's reviewing your paper, but you would probably know whose paper you're reviewing because they probably have their name on it or something. Keep in mind that most MOOCs are not for credit. So traditional concerns about things like, well, are we going to get into trouble by somebody because we let the students grade each other or something? Well, there's not really a grade. There's more like a social interaction. So that's why things like the thumbs up or, on a scale of 1 to 5, how many stars would you give this response? I mean, that is actually a valid system that people use in Amazon product reviews and called social rating systems. And I think those are appropriate for MOOCs. If you're thinking about offering MOOCs for credit, there's a whole layer of other rigor that you have to add to make sure that you're not cheapening your education or saying that you're giving out credit for something that you're not even sure who the student is or if they did their own work. Okay, so is there another table that has like a pressing idea or comment? Yeah.
On the, I guess the question versus the conversation we're having, because when I saw that, would I want to offer a MOOC? No. I've taken MOOCs, I enjoyed the MOOCs that I've been in, but I certainly wouldn't see it as replacing a class.
Right.
With that said, though, there are certainly things that we have learned from MOOCs in terms of what works and what doesn't work. And incorporating those things, I think, can be very helpful, even if you don't want to do a MOOC yourself.
Yes, I absolutely 100% agree with you. And actually, one of the strategies from Penn State that I'm going to be talking about in a future slide is going to touch on that exact point. All right, so card time again. What do you think about a MOOC with a 9% completion rate? So I got some comments from you, but I would also like you to hold up a card. So green for it was a success, yellow for it was a failure, and purple for it depends. Or pink for it depends. Okay, so you're distributed, right? I see a lot of pink, which is interesting, but I see some green, I see some yellow. So here are some comments that you said. One person just said terrible. Wow, that's a really low completion rate. Teaching large classes face-to-face is a challenge. Online is so much harder, which I think will reflect some of your own personal experience. So then you're just projecting that to, if I'm teaching 75 people online now, that's really difficult. But then if I try to teach 75,000, that has to be impossible. Also, I've registered for many MOOCs, haven't completed my first one. maybe most of those students are like me, just want to know some part of the information without having to sit through the whole thing. That is actually a fairly common reason why people sign up for MOOCs. They're curious. That is a C that's on that paper. They're curious about a art MOOC or a maps MOOC. They just, it's like a documentary on television. You'll turn it on for a while. If it's not that interesting, you'll turn it off and you'll wander away. You didn't have to pay for it. But once you actually ask somebody to pay for something, even if it's like a $50 identity verification, Coursera has this interesting thing where they, by typing in your password, they can check the cadence of how you type it in, and then they can verify that that's you after doing an initial, show me your ID check type of thing. So yeah. But that's another point, right? We're learning from the Coursera platform things that might impact our online courses. And it's our responsibility as a research university, or as research universities, all of the ones I've been part of, and FIU included, to explore ways that these technologies can be used for more traditional online courses. Which, by the way, is a very funny phrase for me to be saying. A traditional online course. So in 2012, this is part of my history with MOOCs. At that time, a lot of MOOCs that were coming out, especially through Coursera, were hand-shot videos of a faculty member in a dark office with no mic. They're just recording through their computer, and you can hear the fan going in the street outside, and it's just, awful. It's just really bad. And I think they've dramatically improved since then, because you've had almost a survival of the fittest thing. Some people who tried those the first time thought it was a miserable experience. It was way more work than they thought it would be. They just said they weren't going to do it. But then people who said, yes, this is strategically important, actually started investing a lot of time and resources into it. So at this time, many institutions said that they were doing it just because everybody else was doing it. And that's a terrible answer. So Penn State got together and said, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right, because this is how people are going to see us for the first time. And we're smart enough to not just say we're following the crowd, but to actually think through the strategy for why we'd want to do it. So this is Penn State's MOOC strategy, and some of the key points: to extend the content and expertise for the common good. So Penn State's motto is making life better. So we're saying, if we have a course on epidemiology, and we know that a lot of people around the world who live in very poor areas would not be able to study at a university about epidemiology, but we could tell them about mosquitoes and mosquito gnats and what they could do to control malaria, shouldn't we be spreading that information out to the world? Doesn't that build our national reputation? So enriching online and hybrid course designs, so that's pulling some of those ideas and some of those elements back into the traditional online courses. Showing that we're leaders in online education, because I actually looked up FIU's background, and I think you've been offering online courses since '98. Is that right? A couple of nods. Okay. Penn State, exact same time, exact same history. So we started thinking about offering an online campus in '97, and then opened our doors in '98, and they've grown significantly ever since. So another interesting one is access to high demand or bottleneck courses. So this was just a thought that we were going through. If somebody needs some kind of quantification course in order to graduate, could they take an internal MOOC that would be offered broadly throughout the university, that we could put some academic rigor around and say, all right, you need this college level algebra or this introductory calculus course to graduate. Go and take it as a MOOC. And then once you prove that you can actually do it, maybe you sit through testing in a secure testing facility, then you can move on. College prep or remediation, so this was like the writing example. Somebody who is otherwise academically qualified, but they're just, not quite there with where they need for writing or math or some fundamental skill. You have them take a MOOC for free in order for them to be prepared for success their first semester. And that way they're not wandering around or waiting and pushing back their actual courses to take all the remedial courses. And then visibility of online courses and programs. So the example that I'm going to show next is directly related to that. It's related to a digital art certificate program. So this is the trailer for the art MOOC that Penn State put on. At the time, it was the only art MOOC offered through Coursera. They actually had to create a new category for us.
Hello, my name is Anna Davinsky. I'm the instructor of this course. This course is designed specifically for students without any previous artistic background or students interested in gaining more art knowledge. In this course, you will learn about various art movements, artists, and their artworks. You will also be learning to think, discuss, and write about art, and also making art. There will be a wide range of techniques that will allow you to make your own artwork. The main goal of this course is to encourage creativity and development of personal style. As you progress through this course, I hope you become more open-minded to what art is and can be. I hope you enjoy.
What do you think the completion rate was for the art MOOC? You're close. I'll give you a hint. We've already talked about it today. 9%. 9%. Some of the characteristics is the first art MOOC. It was an experienced instructor who had been teaching online before. And because this was coming out of our College of Arts and Architecture, they decided, you know, we know video, people are going to look at this, and if it looks bad, if it's a bad looking art course, that's just not consistent with the college's mission or this subject matter area. There was Art Essentials with an art creation option. So students could go through, and if they just wanted to browse the material and learn about different art movements, they could do that. They wouldn't get a certificate of completion, but they could do that, they could come in. And so we were kind of accepting this idea that people are going to come in and just browse around for a while and wander off. But if you really wanted to dedicate yourself to creating art of your own, you could do that and submit it through a peer-reviewed system, and then have people vote it up and give you some critique. So again, the customization is in there. People can choose what path they want. The peer interaction is in there. The community, the critique is in there. And then strategically, we decided to tie it into this digital art certificate program. So basically, we were going to be offering a paid 4-credit digital art certificate program through our World Campus. And that could accept 100 people. No more than 100 people, because that's, that's several sections already of an online course. So we said, couldn't we cast the net wide and maybe gather some interest and maybe gather some people, maybe select some good people who could possibly enter into that program. The other idea was if you have art PhD students who are studying different works of art from all around the world, this is an opportunity to create a massive amount of original art. So the results, we had about 70,000 enrollments. We had 6,175 students complete the art option. So they actually submitted enough works of art to get their certificate of completion, which is about 9%. And there was about over 14,000 original works of art created. Anna teaches about 100 students a year already. It would take her 61 years, 61.75 years, to teach that many students, and she was able to do that in one offering. So, the 9% really depends on how you look at it. Again, was it a success or a failure? Could I see the cards? Good, 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 good. All right, I'm glad to see some pink ones still there. It depends. If you want to say it's a success, that's great. Certainly we considered it a success. But you could also look at the amount of time and effort and everything that went into this course. If it didn't turn out to generate any new enrollments, or if we had a 0% people submitting art, then it wouldn't have been a success. It was a risk. But it was something that we were wanting to do. Most MOOCs are terrible at engaging students. Okay, so getting back to the zombie metaphor, just for a little. We're basically saying there's a lot of zombies out there in the world. We're going to dangle this little shiny thing. And some of the people are just going to wander by because it's shiny, and they might, pass it by or something. Some people are actually going to, it's going to get their heart beating again. I don't know how many people in here create art, but it's a very introspective and creative process. There's a C there again. The creation aspect of creating art. You put your heart and soul into a work of art. If you don't, then, like my background is industrial engineering, as you guys know, then it looks like a CAD drawing or something like that. That is a mechanical drawing. But if you, draw a picture of, what your backyard looks like, or a representation of what home is to you, that's putting your heart and soul into something that you care about. Caring is another C. So the idea was to cast the net wide, see who's actually engaged, see where the non-zombies are, and then maybe go after those students, because how are you going to find the 1 in a million person unless you start looking at the millions? Okay, so are there any questions about MOOCs? Any other thoughts about MOOCs? Any reactions to the art MOOC? Yes.
So you use the remediation courses is take for students they take this MOOC before you go into the university. And then you was like, what was the policy? Was that successful? Did it work?
We didn't do that one.
Oh, you didn't do that.
We didn't do that one mainly because, especially in quantification courses, like math, we're really thinking about math. There's a course that Penn State has called Math 4, which doesn't count for anything. I mean, it's a very basic math course for people who are used to saying, I'm not good at math. Now imagine that you had a math MOOC out there and you had a 25% completion rate. Like for those 25%, that's good, but for the 75%, they've had another failure. So we decided not to do that one in particular.
Thank you.
Yeah, but those are the strategic things you have to think through, and there may be a good fit somewhere. Other questions or comments? Yeah. Then over here.
But what I think it can be very successful to offer SAT,
Yeah, like prep courses? Sure, sure. Yeah, yeah, and you certainly could do that. Yeah. Mhm. Sure. Over here first? Oh, okay.
I moved the mic.
Okay, good, good.
One of the things that I said in our initial table conversation about MOOCs is that as someone who's teaching a total of 90 writing intensive students this semester, I think I'm already teaching a MOOC.
Yeah, that sounds like
in practice.
Yeah.
And sort of recognizing, I guess I'm curious about MOOCs, what kinds of end course learning objectives are viable for MOOC style assignments and what kinds are less viable?
Yep. So one of the reasons that MOOCs started off in computer science, or really some of the massive MOOCs is machine grading, exactly. I think your type of course is extremely difficult to do like that unless you engage a group of students. So I mean, this is how you'd scale. You'd want it to have high quality feedback and high contact in a MOOC, which is almost unheard of, right? You could teach another course for people who are going into education or people who are graduate students in a composition program, and they could be doing that as part of their work. So they would work with small groups of 10, 20 students inside the MOOC. You know what I mean? But I think you'd still want to limit it in that case. It's a very difficult thing what you're doing because it's the more you get into that sea of creativity, the harder it is to really give good feedback without the human element.
So you're suggesting then using, for example, advanced undergraduates or graduate students who would be able to do the human assessment on writing assignments as a way to, it's a learning experience for those advanced students and a learning experience for the intros. How does that, I can see that being financially viable. When, as faculty members, what should our position be about that relative to the way that it removes faculty positions? I mean, conventionally we would be needing to hire more of our colleagues to do that work.
Yeah.
Is there a viable reason why we should advocate for this other style you're describing?
Yeah. So. So that depends if you're focusing on remedial coursework and you're, and I don't want to, this is a weighted word, but the political position is that you don't want to exert more resources into remedial courses. If that is a position, then you should explore this option. On the other hand, if you take the opposite position, which is kind of what Penn State did, saying that really we shouldn't be messing around with students who are already on the edge of failing, we should put them in traditional courses, and that's a good way of doing it. Let me tell you what else. San Jose University, San Jose State University, did something very interesting with MOOCs in remedial courses. What they did was they turned it into a flipped experience. So they said, go take this MOOC, and that's where your online lecture content is, but we're going to still meet face-to-face in class, and we're still going to work through problem sets, and we're still going to have in-class writing assignments. We're still going to have peer review. So then, in that case, the the person teaching that course is a guide and a coach. Coaching is one of the C's on there. And then you have more of that contact. Really, I wouldn't recommend using MOOC for people who are on the edge of failing. They're too important, and they're already too. I hear this all the time. They say, "I can't do math. I can't write. I'm not a good writer," and you really can't build up their confidence in a vacuum like a MOOC. Like I said, MOOCs are terrible at engaging students. So, yes.
I'd like to make a comment. The gentleman brought up using MOOCs for SATs. The SAT people are tying up with Khan Academy to produce videos and create modules so that it may be open to more people. I think they're trying to beat out the exclusive SAT prep schools.
Yeah. Which are nice if you can afford to pay those
Exactly.
too.
Yeah.
You're coming from an economically disadvantaged family. So doing that through Khan Academy or like a MOOC is very nice. Yeah, nice. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to move on to flipped courses. We good with that? Okay. This is a video that I sent out earlier. Could I just see a green cards if you would like me to play the video, or you haven't had time to see it, or you'd like to see it again. A pink card if you want me to just move on and talk about it. Okay, so almost all green cards. So sorry, table over there. I'm gonna play the video. This, by the way, the background of this is we created this at Penn State a couple of years ago. I wrote the script for it, and then I had a very talented animator put it together for us.
You teach a course where you normally lecture to students during class time. They work on homework and group assignments during their own time. What if there were a way to do the lectures outside of class time so you could use class time to have students work on activities together? Welcome to Flipping the Classroom, Simply Speaking. It's a pretty common course design. Students gather in a classroom a few times a week to hear a lecture. A faculty member may show slides, play a few videos, demonstrate some concepts, or solve problems. On their own time, students work on problems and arrange times to meet to work on group projects. Some faculty are finding ways to increase student engagement and improve learning by flipping this design. In the new model, students watch, listen to, and interact with content on their own time, and then use class time for engaging activities. Here's how it works. Say you're teaching a biology course. One week you talk about invasive animal species, such as the Asian carp. Instead of lecturing, you post a few YouTube videos about Asian carp. You also produce a video of your own in which you show some photographs of other invasive species and talk about their origins. You want to keep each video interesting, so you keep them under 10 minutes each. To help trigger discussion, you also include some questions that you will be asking students to think and talk about during your next class session. Later in the semester, students can go back to these videos to review key concepts to prepare for an exam or to guide a project or paper. Short videos are just one option. Audio podcasts, VoiceThread, and many types of interactive media can be used as well. The main idea is to capture your presence, thoughts, and guidance that would normally take place in a classroom setting. Now that the lecture is done outside the classroom, what do your students do when they get together? You can have students bring their laptops to class, work in groups, and research one of the other invasive species that you discussed in your video. Where did they come from? What impact are they having? What is being done to control them? Since they're doing this research during class time, they can get your assistance in determining good sources of information and how to interpret what they're seeing. Also, you'll get a better idea of which students are doing their fair share of work in their groups. There won't be any more excuses that students don't have time to get together for group work. If an interesting idea comes from one group, you can get the attention of the class and have a spontaneous discussion. In short, you can create a much more active environment. There are many other activities you can do in the classroom. Have students discuss course concepts or take different sides of an issue and debate their merits. Students could share drafts of papers that they're writing and get feedback from you and other students. Students can work on difficult problem sets, share solutions, and ask for help when they get stuck. Organize students into groups and have them answer questions about a case study, or they could write and practice a presentation about a topic of your choosing. There are ways of using class time for activities involving any discipline. The important thing is to get students to engage with the content of your course. Flipping your classroom involves some serious thinking about the way you are teaching and the way students learn, so you may want to start with a single topic or week and see how it goes. The results may surprise you. This has been Flipping the Classroom, Simply Speaking. To get more information about this topic, visit TLT.
Okay, so In general, when people, there's something in the distance education literature called the no significant difference phenomenon. Is anybody familiar with that? Okay, a couple of people have heard this. I mean, basically, we know what no significant difference it means. It means that whenever you do a comparison of changing media from one type to another, you generally don't get any difference in learning outcomes, in brain outcomes, not heart outcomes, in brain outcomes. So if you have a traditional course that's not doing very well face-to-face and you put that online, generally speaking, students will still do about the same. There will be no significant difference whenever you compare the change in media. And this has been explored, this phenomenon has been explored since technology has been introduced to do media. So television programs, videotaped recordings. The one thing that I'll say that isn't in this literature most of the time is the actual persistence rate. Students in an online course are less likely to persist whenever they run into difficulties, so because they're less engaged. I mean, they don't feel like this is the class time that I need to show up. They'll wander through for a while and then just kind of wander off into something else and drop out of programs. But cognitively, the learning outcomes are about the same. Whenever you get into flip models, you can actually have an increase. And that's not to do with media introduction at all. It's to do with what they call active learning. So you're introducing a lot more active learning into the class time. I mean, if you think about it, the lecture model is a little insane because you're giving the same talk over and over again to different groups of people every semester, and then they go off to do the problem sets when they might have problems. So thinking of the flip model, by the way, I'm not saying lecture is dead and nobody should ever lecture again, but if you think about the flip model, you're saying that, this thing that I'm going to tell you about, you can watch over and over again. You can watch it at double speed. And the reason I mentioned that is because the classroom recording and watching these lectures online and not actually coming to class is a huge issue at University of Miami right now. Medical students, so students who are successful in traditional models, are now watching these videos that are recorded lectures at home at double speed with their notes all around them. They're watching them over and over again. In some cases, especially right before exams, are getting ready. So if you think that it doesn't apply to graduate students, I mean, medical students have very intense curriculum. But the point is that whenever these medical students are in class, they can do things like medical procedures, or look at simulations, or work with models, or observe an expert doing some kind of activity. And the same thing applies to undergraduate courses. Yes. Yeah, so the numbers that I got for this one are for an accounting course, where they took an accounting course that was face-to-face, they put it online, and they've had it online for a very long time. This is a 1,300 person accounting course, by the way. So they had it face-to-face, they had it online, and then this is the percentage of students who passed the course the first attempt. And then, so the number of students who pass are much higher in the flip model, plus the distribution is shifted upwards. So this is one case. If you search for the no significant difference phenomenon, there's actually a website where they scan through all research articles and say, X was tested, Y was tested, they did a comparison, what came out ahead. In most cases, they'll say that it was no significant difference. Yes?
I think during the discussion, I was talking with a few folks, and one of as you know, we've been encouraging our faculty to try and do some flipped classroom experimentation. And one of the biggest questions that we get is, okay, well, once I flip my classroom, what's my role? What do I do, as a professor? So it's that's one of the challenges that we face, is sort of restructuring the traditional methods of teaching into something that's more interactive, where we fit.
Yeah. Yes. The biggest mistake that people make whenever they flip their classroom is they focus on the videos. The videos are easy. I mean, they require some technical skill and you have to be prepared, but you're used to making the videos. The in-class activities are much, much harder. And if you work with somebody who has a background in instructional technology or instructional design, they can help you create some of those activities. So that's actually my advice. Don't try to do the whole thing at once. There's a faculty member in statistics, and she did a flip before talking to us and a flip after. and I'll get your question in a second. It was a statistics 200 course. She had, what she did was she had recorded 45-minute lectures and put them online. And then whenever students came to class, she said, work on your homework. Are there any questions? And that was it. That's as much as she engaged them. Students hated it. Absolutely hated it. They complained. They called their parents complained. I mean, you know, does anybody here, I mean, like, have you gotten the call from the parents, like, what am I paying this tuition for? You're trying to ruin my son's life. Why won't you pass her? Etc. So, like, I see some laughing. So, yes, I think you know, I hope those don't happen. But helicopter parents have graduated. Yes. Oh, sorry, over here first.
Question related to what Jennifer brought up. One time I heard a story that an instructor was going to get review in the classroom, and the instructor was, and it was a surprise review, so the instructor was in the middle of an active activity with the students. So the reviewer, after a little bit, just went up to the professor and said, okay, I'll come back another day that you're really teaching.
Yeah.
So as an instructor, it's important for us to also know that the university supports this type of flipping the classroom, because I don't want to be reviewed and then they'll come in and just say, I'll come back another day when you're really teaching.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Is Uma here? Oh, good. You flipped your chemistry classroom. Yes, awesome. This is,
I flipped my general chemistry 1046.
This is our flipping expert. I had a slide for her.
I teach general chemistry 1 and general chemistry 2. I received a HHMI fellowship to flip the general chemistry 2 class. And I agree with everything he has said thus far. I know the fact that I could put videos online, but I held off for the longest time because the question in my mind was, what am I going to do with them? And then 2 years ago, I got the answer to that, POGLE. POGLE is Process-Oriented Guided Inquiry Learning. They have it for almost all the sciences, and I believe they're starting to build it even for the arts. It's POGIL. If you go to pogle.org, they're published. There's a lot of chemistry out there. There's biology, there is anatomy, and now they're starting to do it for the arts. They have several training sessions that you can go to. The one thing that you need to make sure that you do is that you plan. I spent quite a bit planning. Depending on how large your class is, you're going to need help. My class is 180 people when we started, and the minute people heard that it was going to be a flipped class, about 50 fled.
Zombies. The zombies left.
Yes.
I can tell you why. Because if you look at reviews, again, if you're not looking at Rate My Professors for your own reviews, you really should, because students are saying something to the world. And don't take it too personally, but there might be little nuggets in there, like, you know, panning for gold. And the one that I'm going to be talking about, this Ken Pash for accounting, they write in things like, this class is so easy, it's difficult to pass the test, but you don't even have to go to class if you don't want to. I mean, like, how can it be easy and difficult to pass the test at the same time? And they were kind of equating it to they didn't have to go to class. Or some students will say things that just baffle me, like, you know, I hate this class because I have to think while I'm there. You know, like, okay, welcome to a university. That's what you're here to do, to think, not to just sit there and wander and take whatever's easiest, right? And C's get degrees. So, please continue.
So when I first started this, there was a lot of skepticism. There were people who told me, are you sure you know what you're doing? But I knew what I was doing. I'd done my research. I was sure this would work. But there were a lot of people basically telling me that this was not going to work. But the good part was my learning assistants believed in me, because they had taken courses that were partly flipped, and they believed in me, and they sold the students on it. The first 3 weeks were the hardest, because the students kept asking, when is she going to go back to lecturing? When is she going to go back to lecturing? And the answer was never. And the results of the first exam came back, and I have never heard you should not be doing this again. there was an 8-point difference between my class and the other classes, the next highest class. And it's a common exam. Everybody writes the exam together, the students all take it at the same time, and there was an 8-point difference. And exam 2, something happened, last minute questions were changed, let's not get into that. Exam 3, there is an almost 5-point difference between my class and the next highest grade. So this really works, but the most important thing is to work on selling it to the students. They have to buy into it, and once you get buy-in, it's easy. It is a lot more work for you, it's a lot more work for the students, but I can see that they're really learning.
I also want to take a moment to thank Uma. I'm so glad you're here. So you should act, in my opinion, as kind of a faculty champion for the flip model. Not to put a lot of pressure on you, but if somebody has questions, it's nice to know that there's a local resource.
I told Jennifer that I had to reinvent the wheel. There is no reason why anybody else has to do that. So if you have any questions about flipping the class, I would be more than happy to answer them.
Great. Yes?
I haven't flipped class myself, but I've read up on it, and I guess some of the things that I've heard people write that have been challenges. One of them is that a lot of times their reviews from students tend to substantially drop, particularly if it's a required class where they basically you don't have the option of having 50 students flee; they have to take the class.
Sure.
I'm assuming that there are ways to, I don't know, I guess work on that or try to improve that, and I'm just wondering, is that the case, and what are some of them?
Yep. So the biggest return on investment for flipped courses are courses like this accounting course that I was talking about that have a low first pass rate that students are struggling with to begin with. So it's almost the opposite of the MOOC situation. This does work well for things because again, they can go through like the Khan Academy. They can, if they don't get how you balance equations or something, they can watch that over and over again and sit there with their questions and do it. They can ask questions in class. Some of those principles for best practices in undergraduate education, are you familiar with that? It's seven principles for good practice in higher education. It's like a nationally known thing. It's been around for a while. Yes?
I think one of the most important things is you have to sell it to your students. On the very first day, you have to sell it. You have to get up there, you have to show them data and say, hey, look, you're going to be doing so much better than you could do in a traditional classroom. And there is plenty of data out there. And if you tell students, look, you're going to be learning more, this is how this is going to be useful to you. In addition, you're going to be building these teamwork skills, you're going to be building problem-solving skills, critical thinking skills, which employers are actually looking for, that really helps. And you have to be ready the first time you teach the course. There is going to be some blowback. So it might be a good idea to talk to your chair and let your chair know, hey, my evals might take a hit. As long as they know that this is coming and you're trying something new, I think they will factor that in. And gradually and slowly, your students will come back. I have people who ran for my class who are taking some other professor now sitting in my classroom. And yes, there was an exodus of about 50 students, but about 30 students who had taken me the previous semester came back. So I ended up with a class of about 160. So it is give and take. So I just think it's funny how people who ran away from my class now want to sit in my class. And people who left my class are actually making friends with people in my class so that they can watch my videos and do my worksheets.
All right, I am having a minor technical difficulty, but I'll just use the podium machine here. Okay, so just to get back to that for a second, the reason I say the focus on courses that have a low initial pass rate is because you can go to your department head and say, look, it was a 60% or 65% pass rate, and now it's a 82% pass rate. I mean, this has had significant improvements, and then your students will realize that this is actually a better course, so that material sticks with them. The other part of that is just, you know, stick your toe in the water. I wouldn't recommend jumping in, you know, the first time and trying to flip the whole course, because that can be a bit shocking, especially if you haven't gotten your rhythm yet. Yeah.
Courses, they've shown that they're more effective for upper classes or upper division classes. Is there something like that happening in flipped classrooms where they're more effective for upper division?
I haven't seen that yet, but I mean, students, the thing is, students have to have that responsibility that they're going to do the outside readings or watch the videos or something. Here's a list of things that they have to do outside. So you might say, here's a podcast. We had one that's called the Finance Coach Podcast, that you're supposed to listen to this to review some class concepts and then do some, you know, problems at home, and then come into class and do more problems. Or they're going through some MOOC materials, or they're working on a longer, you know, reflective paper. If your students aren't disciplined enough to do that outside of class, then they're not going to be successful. And generally, by the time you get into the upper division classes, you have students who are going more towards their major, they can see the relevance. But then try to incorporate some more of those C's in there so they actually care about the content. In general, though, I've seen it work across the board in almost every subject area. So outside class, here are some things you can do. Inside class, here are some suggestions. Problem sets, exam reviews, student presentations. A big part of what recruiters look for whenever they're trying to hire people are people who can speak confidently about a subject. They're used to answering questions from other people. In fact, you can have them create portfolios in a course. So if we have one example where students, Penn State has a very good meteorology program. Students were actually filming themselves in front of a green screen going over weather maps, or talking about doing a screencast and talking about some weather software and going through that. So whenever a recruiter came to that group of students, they were like, okay, show me what you can, show me your resume and things. And they were like, okay, well, here's my resume, but here's proof that I can do exactly what you're looking for, and that's a differentiator. So that's kind of a big deal. Okay, so student presentations, peer review of papers, guest speakers. So that was actually a big part of this Accounting 211 course. 1,300 students per semester. Like I said, not very good pass rate. And then the new design had recorded lectures outside, but then students were given options. They could go and take a series of online accounting, do those problem sets, or they could come into a space and work on those together. There were actually in-class activities, but they were mainly to answer questions about the problem sets and bring in guest speakers. So if you're talking about a dry subject matter, I mean, people always say, you know, accountants are really boring. But this guy made accounting come alive. I mean, you could hear from somebody who does corporate accounting and coming in and doing it. It's not just the people who fill out your tax form on you know, H&R Block or something. It's, you know, people who are really making decisions about the way that business works and why it works the way it does. In-class guest speakers, a student advocate. So this was a person who was not the faculty member. Their main responsibility was to listen to this 1,300 student body and be approachable and be like, okay, well, you know, I'll bring up those concerns or I'll give them that feedback. And that made it, you know, a bit more of a connection there. And then focus on higher order thinking. This necessitates new designs in some cases. So whenever we were talking about me coming in and doing this session, I asked that you not be sitting in rows. There's something fundamentally different about being able to see your colleagues, especially if you're going to have any kind of interaction whatsoever. You're going to ask them a question, you'll see somebody out of the corner of your eye nodding something or making a note of something. This changes the dynamic where you're not here to just learn from me, you're here to talk with each other and are more prepared to be more interactive. This is actually from Virginia Tech. It's called the Math Emporium. There's a woman, her name is Carol Twigg. I don't know if anybody's heard of her. She runs the National Center for Academic Transformation, the NCAT, and it's mainly focused around large course redesign. So this Math Emporium model is basically it's like a computer lab where students can come in and they can work on working through problem sets. They can do that collaboratively. They can do it individually. The interesting thing about this, though, is that it's following kind of the one-room school or schoolhouse model, where there's people of varying degrees in there. So students who are sitting next to each other, one might be doing algebra, the other might be doing calculus. So they're all mixed together, and then the TAs and some faculty are roaming around helping students of different levels. So you have them commingled. They can actually help each other. Yeah.
They have that here.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, it's called, I think they call it the math lab. It's in the second floor of GR.
Okay.
And I think it was built maybe, this is that long ago, 1 or 2 years ago. So they have learning assistants and they have a huge computer facility.
Yeah. So is that done instead of lecture sometimes?
It's just help.
Okay.
It's help. They're working their way up towards getting to the full classroom.
Yeah, so that's step one. Step one is finding facilities. It's very difficult to find a big open space like this. But if you can, and you can say, you know, if we have a Monday, Wednesday, Friday class, on Wednesdays we're going to meet in the Math Emporium. We're going to actually work through these things. Again, those 7 principles for best practice in undergraduate education, time on task is a major one of them. So by the time students get to the exam, they've done, you know, dozens and dozens and dozens of problem sets. They know this stuff backwards and forwards. It becomes part of their, you know, their DNA. They don't even have to think about it that much anymore, and they're ready to go on to the next thing. If you expect them to do homework, sometimes they won't turn it in. Sometimes they'll copy off each other. It just doesn't. It's not as effective. Yes.
One thing I want to mention about the math lab, it's actually just for a specific course. It's not for all math students. And students, and when they take this course, they are required to go into the lab for a certain number of hours every week. And they've had great success. From what my understanding is the biggest challenge actually has been the cost. They were able to get a very nice grant to put that together, and it would be great to be able to expand it, but there's a challenge of cost.
Sure.
I don't know if you would have any suggestions for trying to get more money for them.
Yeah, I don't really have any suggestions about the cost. It does change fundamentally the way you need to rethink spaces, new spaces. In many cases, what I've seen traditional computer labs going away in favor of areas like this that would be open for general use whenever they're not being scheduled by a class. But almost invariably, they get scheduled, you know, from the moment they open to the moment they close. They're really that popular. So this course is working out though, right? Okay, great.
From like a 30% pass rate to a 70% pass rate, so that's very good.
Yeah. I mean, that just blows me away. I mean, seriously, those kind of changes in numbers are just like, I don't know, that gets my heart going. And I'm not just saying that to, you know, be corny or something, but it really, you know, I have an emotional reaction to something like that. Like, imagine that student who was in the 70% of failing before is now in the 70% of passing. You're still going to have some people who are struggling. I mean, that's okay. And we'll come up with the next idea to help that group too. There are also some things that are done in parallel. NCAT has some great ideas for these. So you might have like a 3-credit writing course, like you were saying before, but then a 1-credit add-on for somebody who's struggling a little bit, and they'll say, you know what, in the next week we're going to be covering here are some writing assignments we're going to do. Let's take some extra time and review those ahead of time. So by the time they get to that week, they feel better prepared going in. So you could do the same thing with the math class. So in this case, it could be a 3-credit course with a 1-credit add-on, and then students are coming in once a week for some preparatory work before they go. Okay, so we had our flipping expert. Why did you flip? Was there anything that surprised you, Uma?
I was surprised. I thought students wouldn't take to it, but after the first 3 weeks, they got the hang of it, and there were a lot of people who actually came and thanked me and said they were doing a lot better in the class than they would have done in a traditional classroom, and that really surprised me.
Yep.
Because I did not expect students to catch on that fast, but as somebody has said, these people are a lot more tech savvy than us, It's just that they are wedded to the lecture mentality of just passively sitting there. So with a little push, they might be ready to adapt.
Yep, that's great. I just noticed the time, and I do have the gamification stuff to talk through. So I'm going to be very concise about this. I'm right that it's almost 12:30, right? Okay. I hate standing between people and lunch, because then the zombies really come out. They start, I start to look tasty. I do need to leave. I mean, I can stay until about 12:45, but that's about it. In case you are getting hungry, there's candy in here. The other thing that I'm trying to do is associate that every time you see zombies in popular culture, you'll think about your students. Or anytime somebody raises their hand and says, "Is this going to be on the test?" you'll be like, "Aha, this is a zombie, I know it." Or maybe every time you have a Jolly Rancher, you'll think from now on, "Oh, Alan had something. He said something, didn't he?" So here are your games. I told you about your games and why you thought they were fun. Here are some of the ones that you listed. I played every single one of those games. And some of the things you said were, I like to do mimes and pictures that lead to someone figuring out something, and there's something in there about telepathy. I didn't include that part, but I thought that was pretty cool. Engaging, unpredictable, interactive, and fun. I don't think we involve enough surprise or enough variability in what we do in higher education. Forces me to think through strategies and tactics, and then this idea that you and somebody else are trying to figure each other out. So as you get better, that person gets better, they get better, you get better, and you can kind of push each other in a competitive but also mutually beneficial way. Remembering words, learning new ones, interacting with family and friends. So those are some of the C's, like the community, the challenge. Communication, creativity, there it is, reading other people's minds. It engages my interests without stressing me out that I have to do too much. So there's this idea that with games, you can fail. And in fact, I'll show you my games next. In most of those, failure is common and expected, but we don't allow students enough time to fail, and the element of surprise. So here are some of my games. I picked video games because, again, I've done most of your games too. The one in the upper left is Super Mario Brothers, and that was the first game that I played where you and another character were on the screen at the same time and cooperating with each other towards a common goal. You could also interfere with each other, but then you were like laughing and stuff. And there's an emotional attachment to that because you and the other person are working together. Tetris is a game. Does anybody know how Tetris, you play a game of Tetris and how do you win Tetris? Anyone? All right, anybody, how you win Tetris? Well, that's how you lose. Yeah, so you can clear the whole screen, but then you get a more difficult screen. Eventually you lose. Eventually the pieces come down so fast. No one in the world has ever won a game of Tetris, but it was the most addicting game of its time because people wanted to see how far they could get, how much they could push. And it's this idea of like flow and continuously adapting change and challenge. There was EverQuest, which was one of the first massive open, not massive open online games. It was a massive multiplayer role-playing game where you can create a character, you can customize how it looked, you can customize how you presented yourself to the world. You could be male or female, it didn't matter. World of Warcraft is down there. Angry Birds is physics. People are playing physics. They're trying to figure out angle and velocity and how you get things to go, and the blocks behave in different ways. Some of them have more mass than others. And then Candy Crush. Apparently, according to my records, I must hate candy because I spent a lot of time crushing it. But there's a random element in Candy Crush. There's a way to be creative in the way you solve these problems. Angry Birds and actually all of these. And there's an enormous amount of learning that actually goes on where communities are recording videos of them being successful, beating a boss or overcoming a challenge and posting those online and giving comments. In games like EverQuest and World of Warcraft, they actually do calculations. It's called, they're trying to figure out their DPS. Does anybody know what that stands for? There has to be some EverQuest players in here someplace. Or World of Warcraft. DPS? No one? Damage per second. Yeah, so they'll figure out, okay, with this gear and this person and this buff and blah, 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 I was able to produce 98.7, but if I change it around this way, it's 98.8. Win! Because that can make the difference between a whole group of people who are collaborating in this online space, either succeeding together or failing together. Is anyone wearing one of these? You know what they are? Okay, is there a nod back there? Can you tell me what it is? Yes. Yeah, it's a Fitbit. So this is a gamification element. This is constantly tracking me. It's constantly tracking my movement. It tells me on my phone how many steps I've taken and what my goal is. It actually gives me prompts that says you've almost made it. You can, if all you need is like 1,200 more steps, and you can complete your goal for the day. I can adjust my things if I want as a social component, so I can share this with my Facebook friends, and then I'm accountable to those people. But if I want feedback, all I have to do is tap it twice, and it tells me, okay, well, I've completed about 1 mile, and I'm on my second one. So I have a little bit more to go today. As soon as I put this on, this changed my activity level. I said, all right, you know, I would tap it twice. I'd be like, oh, it says I need to do another mile. I guess I'll take the dog out for a walk before midnight, because then I want to, you know, hit my goal. So there's that kind of, it's about $100. It's called Fitbit, and like I said, compared to a gym membership, it'll really change your life. It actually, you know, I've done a lot of walking using this, but it's actually improved my running, because I was only running like 3 days a week, but this gets me doing 5 miles a day walking, and that really improves things. Plus, I've lost like 5 pounds. Badges. So we hear a lot about badges. They are all around us. This is a badge. This is a trophy. I killed this thing. I put this up on my wall. By the way, I'm a vegetarian. I don't like guns, so this is not from my house. Girl Scout badges. Okay, so we think, you know, maybe badges aren't really that serious. Does anybody have anything that look like these? Yes. Yes. See my Fitbit question person. And what is it? It's what? Yes. So I have one right here. This is the one that I got for the Miami half marathon. You know, you could not pry this out of my cold dead hands. I love this thing. It is a piece of metal. It's kind of gaudy, but I earned it. Now, if I would get one of these, if somebody would just be like, oh, this was in my closet, here you go, I'd be like, what's that? I don't want that. Now, that's just going to clutter things up. But since I ran this, it actually has meaning. So that's what badges are. They're symbols to yourself and to other people that you've accomplished something. So I'm not a big advocate of people just handing out badges for like showing up. Like, you know, thanks for sitting passively in a seat for 45 minutes, you get a badge. They have to actually represent something meaningful. Does anybody know what this one is? Maybe I won't ask that one. This is the Alcoholics Anonymous 1-year recovery coin. And it means something. It's something you can put in your pocket, and it can just remind you that, that you've made a significant accomplishment. This is Sen Delaney. They're a management firm. They give you a chip whenever you've completed their management course, and you're supposed to keep it with you, and it's supposed to remind you to focus on the things that are important. So these things, I mean, once you start opening up your eyes, you start seeing them all around. This is a Microsoft certification. This is Angry Birds. The interesting thing about games is that they not only tell you that you've completed this game, you can get 1, 2, or 3 stars. If you get 1 star, that means you've completed the game under the minimal characteristics. If you get 2 stars, it means you've done a pretty good job. If you've done 3 stars, that's bragging rights. So I would go through and play Angry Birds. I'm a little OCD. I would play it, keep playing the level over and over again until I get 3 stars, and that's the only time I could move on. Other people just want to see how far they can get, and they want to explore the way of doing it. You're told high score. You can share that with your friends. You can be like, "Ha, I beat you." I mean, these are things that games incorporate that aren't really present in education. The thing I like about the Angry Birds is that level of challenge that I have. It's on one of the C's on paper. That there are stretch goals. That sure, 1 star is fine, but wait a minute, maybe you want 2 or 3. Maybe there's an opportunity to be even more creative beyond just the minimum. PhD. That's a badge. Now, I don't want to trivialize anybody who has one in this room. I mean, but it is a symbol that you share with people. I saw it all over the agenda today. It's a symbol that you want to share with people saying, I've done something significant. You know, I know my field. I have this air of authority. I mean, like, I have this PhD and it means something to you. If somebody told you that I'm going to take away your PhD, you'd be like, no, I earned that. It's just 3 letters, right? But it's not. So let me talk to you about an educational game. I'm not talking video games. These are the kind of like more realistic educational games. This is one called World Without Oil. Jane McGonigal was one of the creative people behind this one. I'm a big fan of hers. So I'll just play this video. This was done in 2007.
Gas prices jumped to over $4 a gallon.
$4 a gallon! Okay, the time
very much police state going on in the streets now. And one way or the other, we're all in this together.
This is our local farmers market.
This is the jinx. This is peak profit.
Cal here.
So the purpose of World Without Oil was to engage students around a hypothetical situation. It's an alternative reality game. So all they really do was say, okay, imagine that all of you, all of the players, are now living in a world where there's an impending crisis where all of the oil in the world is going to run out. You still have some now. You have to react though, because the gas prices are getting, up to $4 a gallon. That seemed outrageous in 2007, but now we know it's like that's normal. But then it got up to $16 a gallon, then it was $30 a gallon, then there became riots. So as the game went on, they would just say, here's the news of the day, here's a new scenario, here's another part of the challenge, and how do you imagine that you would react to that? And so you had people talking about doing local farming, riding their bikes to work, having to share rides, and then their cars going aside, and how that changed other things, like if you have no oil, you have no plastics, you have no imported food from other areas. Is it even possible to live in your house anymore if you're in the north and you require oil heat? Like, how do you have to quickly retrofit your house before the coming winter? So it's a very interesting kind of thought experiment. And then there's one more video that I want to share with you. This is kind of the culmination of what a class can look like. This is a physical large lecture class. What it could look like whenever somebody is hitting on all cylinders with those C's. It's a different way of thinking. And this is my friend Sam Richards from Penn State. He's a sociology professor and he breaks rules all the time. He's one of the 101 most dangerous faculty on the planet, and that was by some conservative thing because he likes people to talk about race and gender and sexuality. So this is called You're Fired. And I want you to kind of, don't count the C's that you see, but think about this. 720 people in his class, and he makes it feel like a personal conversation.
I want to pick out a few people. So the first person I want 3 of us in the room to have a conversation with each other and explain something to people of color. I need 3 white people. Don't raise your hands. The first one I need is somebody who's like a redneck. I need a redneck. Okay? Now redneck. But here's what I'm going to do. But redneck is not Look, redneck, this is the thing about white people that's kind of interesting. First off, redneck is a pejorative word, but not among rednecks. Like if white people who are not rednecks call a redneck, then it's a problem. If black and brown people call a redneck, it's a problem. But for rednecks, it's perfectly fine to call one another rednecks. So you have who's this one stand-up comedian that does all the redneck jokes and so on and so forth? Yeah, the Foxworthy dude. I mean, come on, do me a favor, stand up real fast. Stand up real fast. I'm gonna have you do this. You're not you might be a redneck and you don't even know, man. All right, I know you're not. I want you to find a redneck in the class. You might be nervous about it, but listen, there aren't that many in here, I'll tell you, and there are many more brothers in here who got your back, so don't worry about it.
Right there.
No, hang on, wait, turn around once, real fast. How many people in the class, close your eyes, don't look. How many people in the class would identify, like, and I don't mean like completely, like everyone, but could say like, yeah, I'm a redneck, I'm from redneck culture. Oh, dude, they're all over the place, man. I'm telling you. All right. So who'd go ahead, pick someone out. You can walk up the aisle a little bit. You know, you got to walk up the aisle, dude. You got to get a close-up look.
At this point, there's
who would you pick out as a
curiosity.
redneck?
There's community. He's actually touching the student at times. These are not the rules that we're
And
talking about.
and you're gonna have to tell us why. Dude,
Everybody's
you're
heart
being
beating a
close.
little bit. What's he gonna do?
You're
Is he gonna pick
close,
me?
man. Dude, him? That dude? Dude, he's like, are you kidding? Hang
This
on.
guy is beat red, by the way.
Dude, you are like, come here. Dude, this is great. You are so wrong. I mean, look at this guy. Dude, how far away from, are you even close to being a redneck?
I don't think so. I hope not.
No, it's all right. Dude, I'm very close to it, actually. I mean, I am in some ways. What's your background?
Polish.
Polish? Why did you pick him, though? No, hang on. Well, okay, so why, they all look, hang on, what did you just say?
I said they all look alike to me.
All right, they all look alike. All white people look alike?
Yeah.
All right, dude. Okay, that's all we need. Thanks, man. You're not a redneck. Bad news. Okay, you're fired. All right, so listen.
Alrighty, guys. I'm not no redneck. I don't know what the kid was thinking in class. I don't drive pickup trucks. I drive sport cars. I shot a gun before, but don't know what the 3 means on the back of a pickup truck.
And it just goes on for another, couple seconds about this. So basically, this is Sam does a great job with this. He has people in his class who are other students. They just have portable held cameras. He rotates that around. He has TAs for his course too, who break these students into small sections, who do these recordings. But this is kind of like a reflective piece afterwards, where you get in the mind of the student who is actually called out. The other interesting thing about this is that Sam Richards, the teacher who taught that course, used to be a zombie. Seriously. He was in college, he was going through college, he was just wandering around, he was just taking whatever courses he wanted, and then he had a sociology class, and the faculty member asked him, don't you wonder why things are the way they are in the world? And that was like, blew his mind. He became like, instead of just smoking pot all the time and getting Fs, he smoked pot all the time and got his dissertation and is now, teaching a course. Sorry, Sam, I know you might be seeing this video sometime. But my point is that people can be turned around, and because he kind of understands what it took to engage him, he's now able to engage other students. There's just a few final thoughts, and then I have to wrap up the session here. What you do whenever you flip a course, or even this session today, you might critique it and say it looked disorganized, or it's corny. That's okay. Like, you have to put yourself out there, and you have to take some risks. There's something that my mentor, Michael Moore, who's not the film producer, he's the editor for the American Journal of Distance Education, he talks about structure versus dialogue. The more structured you have something like a lectured course or a television series, the more efficient it is, but the less variability there is. The less it can really respond to what happens in the moment, or to something like this. And the more you get comfortable with dialogue, the more you practice it, the more you can interact instead of just scripting things, the better. Zombies may rebel. We've heard about that. The students hate it at first, or they try to leave. Digital storytelling can make an idea sticky. So whenever you hear about zombies, I want you to think about this session, think about interaction. Risk-taking is self-cardiology. I mean, faculty can turn into zombies too. There's actually a story in one of the Harry Potter books about a professor of history who teaches the same lecture all the time, and at night he dies, and then the next morning his ghost just wakes up and goes and keeps teaching class. So it's possible to get in that routine yourself, and start with small steps. So with that, thank you.